Welcome back to the Sad Crime Channel. Today's story took place in the United Kingdom in 2011. It revolves around David Twigg, a 46-year-old carpenter who ran a joinery business, and Julie Dixon, 43. The couple had been engaged and living together in Burghley Marsh near Skegness in Lincolnshire for 15 years. Those were happy years, but tragically their happiness was abruptly ended by events that, as it turned out later, were premeditated. On March 13, 2011, Julie called the emergency services. She was distraught and trying to explain the reason for her call. She said she was at work with her partner when suddenly there was a lot of smoke and fire. She managed to escape, but her fiancé was still inside the building. She urgently requested the fire brigade and an ambulance. Julie admitted that they had been attacked by two men before the fire started. When help arrived, Julie was already waiting outside, panicking and terrified. She pointed out where her fiancé was. The building was quite large, but the firefighters were surprised that the fire was not extensive and had not spread to the rest of the building. However, there was a lot of smoke which was still dangerous, and they needed to find David quickly. Julie pointed to the door and they found David kneeling and collapsing at the firefighters' feet. Although David had suffered significant injuries from the fire, he was alive when brought outside. Unfortunately, due to the amount of toxins in his lungs, the rescuers were unable to save him despite their best efforts. Julie couldn't believe her partner had died in such a cruel way. She was devastated and screamed in anger. She also had some injuries and a considerable amount of toxins in her lungs, but she hadn't been inside as long as David. Her face was covered in soot and her hair was in poor condition, but the rescuers assured her she would be okay with time. This entire situation became a criminal case because, according to Julie's testimony, two masked men had attacked them at the back of the building. This aligned with the firefighters' observation that the attackers aimed to damage only the rear of the building. The investigators wondered why David was found in such a position. According to them, the answer was simple. David knew he probably wouldn't survive, but he hoped for a miracle and prayed before his death, which is why he was found kneeling.
We've just gone up to the workshop to pick some things out.
Yeah.
And somebody came up with us behind.
Yeah.
And they attacked us and set fire to the place.
So the place has actually set fire?
Yeah.
Is it the building that's on fire?
It is, yeah.
It is, okay then.
I got out. I managed to get them.
Right then. It's okay. Is everybody out of the building?
No, there's still my partner in.
Right, is he able to get out of the building?
No, because there's fires near the door.
So he's stuck inside, he can't get out of the fire?
I opened the door, I've got my spare keys, I opened the other door, and the flames have come back.
David and Julie lived in a small town where everyone knew each other, if not personally, then at least by sight. Crime in the area was almost non-existent, so what happened to David shocked everyone. David lost his life at 46, still a young man with so much ahead of him. Investigators needed to determine if he had fallen into debt or gotten involved with the wrong people. David was described as a calm and well-liked man, especially by women who considered him a gentleman. He was an only child with a close relationship with his parents, who were very proud of him and his kindness. Since 1996, he had been in a relationship with the love of his life, Julie, and they planned to spend their lives together. The couple was genuinely harmonious and compatible, avoiding unnecessary arguments through honesty and communication. Before meeting David, Julie had been married, but the marriage ended. She had no children from her previous marriage or with David. Despite their differences, Julie being energetic and social while David was quiet and home-loving, they worked well together. David was a carpenter and Julie managed the finances and client appointments for their business. They lived and worked on the same property, yet they never tired of each other. David's parents were very fond of Julie, respecting her and treating her like their own daughter. They were happy that their son had found such a wonderful woman who always supported him and helped run their business. David had a stellar reputation among the townspeople. Everyone genuinely noted his kindness and willingness to help others, even allowing delayed payments for his services. Investigators were puzzled why someone with such a good reputation would be attacked. Initially, they thought it might be due to his valuable tools worth thousands of pounds, but nothing was missing. After Julie was discharged from the hospital, she repeatedly sobbed, unable to accept David's loss, insisting he had no enemies. Once Julie felt better, the officers asked her for a detailed statement. Julie recounted that on March 13th she and David were in the tool shed when they heard the shouts of two men, followed by smoke and fire. She managed to escape, hoping David would too. One of the attackers grabbed her arm, trying to force her back, but she broke free and ran outside. She attempted to re-enter through another door but was overwhelmed by the toxins and retreated, calling for help. In the distance, she saw two young men running away. She couldn't describe them in detail because she was in such shock that she couldn't focus on their appearance, only on what was happening to David. Julie mentioned that the attackers wore large black hoodies, black gloves, caps, and masks. She could only see their eyes, which told her they were fair-skinned men. This description did not help the police much. They asked Julie to hand over the clothes she was wearing at the time for examination, hoping the attacker who grabbed her might have left some DNA. Unfortunately, nothing was found. The investigators also struggled to find concrete evidence at the scene because the fire had destroyed everything. The cause of the fire was determined to be gasoline poured near the shed door, ignited by a match. David was alive when the attackers locked the doors. The cause of his death was the presence of a large amount of toxins in his lungs. One puzzling detail was that the door to the shed where David was found was locked with a key, which was missing from the scene. The firefighters had to use force and specialized equipment to get inside. The key was eventually found on a neighboring property, in the direction Julie indicated the attackers had fled. Among the keys, one fit the shed door. The investigators issued a public appeal for help, asking for any information, no matter how small, that could shift the investigation's direction. One charitable organization even offered a £3,000 reward for concrete information. Julie appeared on media, tearfully saying that her heart was broken after losing her partner, that the pain she felt was indescribable. She emphasized that David wasn't just her partner for 15 years, but also her friend and soulmate. The officers spoke with the locals, going door to door, asking if anyone had seen or heard anything. They also visited nearby shops and a gas station. It was a Sunday evening on March 13th, and they hoped someone walking their dog in the wooded area might have noticed something. Unfortunately, no one had seen or heard anything, leaving the case at a standstill until a gas station employee was questioned. It turned out that sometime before the tragic event, letters addressed to Julie and David started arriving at the gas station. Initially, the manager was puzzled and personally delivered the letters to the couple's home. However, one day, Julie asked him to continue receiving their mail at the station, and she would pick it up herself. The man had no objections. This behavior was very strange to the investigators, as they wondered why Julie would take such a step. Upon checking the couple's private and business bank accounts, more lies from Julie were uncovered. The business was so deeply in debt. The image of a happy couple began to fall apart. Julie had many opportunities during numerous interrogations, but never once mentioned their financial troubles. She claimed they were honest with each other, yet she had been hiding the truth from David. It became clear that Julie had lied to David and tried to conceal the situation by asking the station manager to hold their mail, likely to intercept overdue notices and penalty letters. Julie continued to buy expensive equipment for David, keeping him unaware of the business's problems. How could David not know anything? He trusted Julie, knowing she had managed their finances for years and was a good accountant. He thought everything was fine and saw no need to check. Unexpectedly, Julie became the main suspect as inconsistencies in her version of events emerged, starting with the fire, which was started right at the workshop cupboard door where David was locked. Gasoline and a match were used, and the cap from the gasoline bottle was found inside, lying on a barrel. The bottle itself was never found, but it seemed odd that the attackers had the time to calmly unscrew the bottle, place the cap in a visible spot, and then flee in haste. Moreover, traces of gasoline were found on Julie's clothes. She explained that this happened when she went to check on David and opened the door, at which point the gasoline must have gotten on her clothes. However, experts determined it was impossible for the gasoline traces to be on her clothes from merely opening the door and being exposed to smoke. Julie's injuries also seemed inconsistent with a brief exposure to smoke. She had soot in her hair and some marks on her face, but it wasn't as intense as she described to friends and investigators. A crucial piece of evidence suggesting Julie's involvement was a surveillance video from the gas station showing her buying a bottle of gasoline. Julie was called in for questioning again, and this time she shocked everyone by presenting a completely different version of events than she had previously told. This time, she claimed that she and David had made a mutual decision to end their lives because they had a lot of debts and simply wanted to be done with it. She said she bought a bottle of gasoline, but when she struck the match, she had a change of heart and fled. She explained that she had initially told the first version mainly because of David's parents, fearing their reaction. As I mentioned before, David was very close to his parents, and she was afraid that if they found out their son had taken his own life willingly, their hearts couldn't bear it, as they were already elderly. Investigators had to check this version, although from the very beginning they believed it was not true. It was determined that if David wanted to take his own life, he wouldn't have to lock the door. He wouldn't be praying on his knees for life. Moreover, assuming that they did make such a decision and she gave up at the last second, how is it possible that she was on the other side of the door and even locked it, so David couldn't get out? None of it made any sense. When it came to light that Julie could be involved in David's death, the entire property was thoroughly checked, as earlier the focus was mainly on the couple's work equipment and computer. Now their home and private computer were examined. Someone searched Google for answers to questions like, what is the best way to poison someone, or what substance to give so that it doesn't show up during an autopsy? Investigators knew who asked these questions. Julie did, as she asked from her private account. This discovery confirmed that Julie had been planning to take her partner's life for some time, rather than it being a spur-of-the-moment emotional act. She was charged with murder, but she maintained her innocence. During the trial, she presented yet another, a third version of events. She said David asked her for help. In his attempt to take his own life, that was the plan from the beginning, that he was going to die, and she was going to stand by the side, watching everything, only helping him with matches and gasoline. The prosecution didn't believe this. Rather, they did everything to prove that Julie took David's life in cold blood. The motive in this case was clear. She didn't want David to find out the truth about their financial problems, and with each passing day, week, or month, it became harder to hide it all. Officially, David owned the business and he was the one with the debts, so most of the letters came in his name. Julie answered phone calls about the debts, and each time she said David was sick, he had gone away, or simply was unavailable. She knew that soon the bailiff would enter their home, so she wouldn't be able to hide it any longer. She made the worst decision possible, to get rid of David once and for all, a partner who trusted her, loved her, and greatly respected her. David had no idea that Julie had been telling her friends that she no longer wanted to be with him, that she didn't love him, that she was bored, that she wanted to leave. This was probably another reason to take David's life. David died knowing that the woman with whom he had spent a significant part of his life wanted to get rid of him in a cruel way. It also came to light that before calling for help, she waited some time to make sure David didn't survive. She had time to go to the bathroom, look at herself in the mirror, and assess if the injuries she had inflicted were sufficient. Once she got rid of the gasoline bottle and the keys, she called for help. And right from the start, she behaved strangely, but no one noticed it before. She didn't ask for help in the manner of, "There's a fire, there's no time to talk." Instead, she started the story from the very beginning, where they were, what supposedly happened step by step, and only at the very end mentioned David locked in the shed. Investigators are sure she did this solely to make sure David was no longer alive, because if they had managed to save him, he would have immediately said who caused this tragedy. On the trial, Julie heard the evidence that had been obtained. Finally, she decided to admit that she had planned the whole action herself, that there were no third parties involved, and that she did it out of fear of facing the truth. Julie was responsible for the practical side of their business and managed the accounts. Gordon Aspden, the prosecuting officer, stated that she failed to pay invoices, leading the firm into chronic cash flow problems. She hid mail so that David didn't know he had been declared bankrupt, owing thousands of pounds in taxes. Many speculate that she confessed because she realized her lies weren't working and she wouldn't be able to avoid punishment this way. Now she hoped that by confessing she might receive a lighter sentence. John Mickle said, "There is no way David would ever consider suicide. We were making plans for the next year." David's best friend, Keith Hampsall, added, "They had just put up 200 meters of fencing on Sunday and they were both going to commit suicide. Ridiculous." The judge presiding over the case at Lincoln Crown Court remarked that Julie's performance during a call at the emergency scene and later at the hospital would be worthy of the highest praise had she been an actress in a fictional drama and would have merited an Oscar. Julie was sentenced to 23 years in prison after eventually pleading guilty. As Judge Michael Heath addressed Julie directly, he told her, "David Twigg was an amiable, hard-working, and honorable man. What you did to him was evil. There was a significant degree of planning and premeditation. The pain that your prolonged and multiple lying has caused David Twigg's parents can only be imagined." The court heard that, outwardly, the couple appeared to be in a happy relationship, but Julie managed to conceal the chaotic financial state that had engulfed David's business. Keith, David's best friend, said, "The way David died will haunt me for the rest of my life. I was absolutely devastated. Nobody deserves to die like that. He was my best friend. It still troubles me to this day. To my death, it will continue." No one could understand why Julie resorted to such a heinous act. She could have left or admitted to lying. Anything would have been better than what she did. David's parents supported and comforted her for 3 months after their son's death. She played her role as best she could, earning sympathy even from the investigators who initially took her at her word and didn't consider her a suspect until concrete evidence emerged. Only the sentence Julie received brought some relief to David's parents. After the trial, they stated clearly that they were cutting all ties with Julie. From now on, they left her alone with her thoughts because what she did destroyed their lives and broke their hearts. Thank you for listening to this tragic story. Goodbye.